This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for having us. I get to be even more nervous that this is recorded. If I do something goofy, then it's a permanent record. So thank you for that. That's fantastic. My name is Carson Hochhalter. I'm Director of Operations for the Lifeguard Group. This is Anna. She is interning with us at the Lifeguard Group. The Lifeguard Group, when we first launched about 6 years ago, we put together our 4 pillars of what we wanted to be, what our mission was going to be. And those pillars are to respond, rescue, restore, and revive. And first and foremost, respond. It's in that #1 spot for a reason. From day one, we've dedicated that no matter what, we're going to show up. And we might not always do it perfectly. Sometimes we don't do it right. But end of the day, we're going to be there. And so that was first and foremost for us. We started just a small group, not much for funds, but with big dreams. And 6 years into it, it really doesn't feel like it's been that long, but there's been so much that has happened. So this right here is a big part of what we do, just the training, educating, awareness piece. We've done that from day one. But just getting our goal through this is to hopefully for some get to them before this can ever take place. But then on the tail end as well, where you come in, as we'll talk a lot about, is if it already is taking place, how do we recognize, how do we respond to that going on? So training, educating is a huge part. We also have just a few months ago, I think we said July, we officially opened our safe house for victims of human trafficking. That's been in the works for around 2 years. Through even before that, the dreaming was taking place, but the physical property, about 2 years. And then with all the construction and all of that, we were just finally able to get that opened up. And we already have 3 women that are in the house on site going through equine therapy, dance therapy, art therapy. They also get to work through other therapies, counseling, job training, medical care, dental, all that kind of stuff, with the goal of when they come to this place, they can not only feel safe, but it's going to be a full restorative place for them, to where when they go to leave, not only are they healthy, but they are well equipped and prepared to move on and to live the life that they were always meant to live. So that's a huge part. Search and rescue is also a part of what we do. We've got a search coordinator. If we get a call from law enforcement or a direct family member, we go out, set up searches. One that you may have heard of out of the Missoula area is Jermaine Charlo. She is actually still missing. We got that call literally the day after our first board meeting. We finished that meeting up probably those days. Board meetings were taking quite some time. Late in the evening, next morning we get that call, and that's what the launch of the Lifeguard Group was. Still searching for her, but since then we've had the opportunity to assist in a lot of other searches with a lot better outcomes, which has been fantastic. There's some other branches that we won't get into that the Lifeguard Group does. I do have some information I'll put out at one of the breaks that you can kind of look at everything that we do, if there's any way that you want to get involved. But today the focus is on healthcare and how you can play a role. The presentation that we're going to go through is called just our Recognize and Respond training. So how can you recognize human trafficking when it's happening, when it's in front of you, and what steps can you take to respond to that? So before we dive in too much, and before I get to this slide, I don't want to forget this part. As we're going through this, I was not looking back to high school and all my years of school, I wasn't what you'd call like a great student. I struggled through school and I did not like the lecture process. So today I don't want this to feel like a lecture. I don't want this to be 7 o'clock we're going to. So I don't want this to be 3 hours of me just talking at you. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, please throughout, feel free, chime in, ask those questions. Also, there's fantastic food back there, beverages in this room. If you want to get up, help yourself to that at any time. You're not going to bother me in any way. And then, of course, if you need bathroom breaks, that stuff, don't feel like you've got to get permission or wait for a break to do that. With that said, there's always like one or two in the audience that even though I give that permission, they're like not going to get up in front of everybody. And I make fun of them, but it's like, I'm that guy. Like I will hold it and I will shake my legs until there is a break so that nobody looks at me. So we will take breaks throughout as well, just to help those one or two individuals. There's some material that we're going to go over. Obviously, human trafficking, it's a difficult subject. It's hard to talk about. And there's going to be some things that we go over, some images that we see, some videos that are it's just hard to watch, hard to hear about. I don't know your past. I don't know your history, any experiences that you have had. If at any time, like something is just too much, if the image is too much, I'll give warnings best I can before those come up. You can lay your head down, cover your eyes. If you want to step outside, again, you're not going to offend me. I would ask if somebody near you gets up and exits and they seem upset, that somebody just goes and makes sure that they're okay. And then feel free to come back in at your own pace. So before we dive in, there's some questions that we need to answer and that we're going to answer throughout our time together. So first off, let's look at the big picture, right? How big the crime of human trafficking really is. And to understand that, we need to know how many victims there are, which you'll see we've got statistics and numbers throughout. We can make our best guess, right? We don't have pimps and traffickers lining up and submitting documentation of this is how many girls I'm running in my stable. So we do have statistics. Obviously, they're not going to be 100% accurate. Who are the traffickers? What are their routes and gains? Then we're going to look at what are the trends. And a question that comes up a lot is the problem getting worse? Is the problem getting more severe? Or is it just a result of better reporting from different organizations, government agencies, more resources available, which some of those we'll talk about. So are people just waking up to this and now noticing and the problem has just stayed the same? And then why and where is it happening? Second set of questions, and another one that we get a lot, and it's a very easy one to ask, right? Why aren't governments doing more? Why isn't law enforcement doing more? And that's an easy one to get stuck on, right? It's easy for us to point the finger and being like, this is a big problem. Why aren't you taking care of this? But the question we should be asking is why aren't we all doing more? And really that's what we're here for today. That's what we're doing today, is to put ourselves into a position to do more. When I started with the Lifeguard Group, my original position was actually student outreach director. So I headed up our school assembly program, which is still running. But the whole purpose of that, again, is to get this information to students, hopefully before this can ever happen. So we go in, big production, big screens, projectors, lights, loudspeakers, get their attention, draw them in with stories, and communicate that information to them, how they can look out for themselves, how they can look out for their friends. Another piece of that is we do a teacher training so that they can be on the lookout. We do a community comeback rally for parents and community members. But then there's a really important piece And it's up to the school which of these pieces they want to involve in their program. But the one that I think is vital is our classroom sessions. So we get to go into classrooms, smaller group of kids, so they get to have this kind of experience where they can engage, they can ask questions, pull somebody aside if they need to, which happens in every assembly. To this point, we haven't done an assembly where we haven't had at least one student come up and either self-identify or say, this is happening to my friend, what do I do? There was a school that we were at, small town Montana, and I know none of you can relate to that, but we were in this classroom session, and this particular teacher, she had handed out cards to all the kids so that they could write their questions down, handed them forward, and our group of 4 of us stood at the front and went through, and based on the question, our search coordinator was with us, so if there was something on search and rescue side, he would answer. We're flipping through, and of course you get a goofy one every now and then, asking how long have you guys been friends and that kind of thing. But I'll never forget one of those questions when I flipped it to the top, and all it said on the card was, will it ever get better? And at that moment, I didn't have an answer for that kid, and it broke my heart. And I thought on that, and I prayed on that, and it just would not get out of my head for the longest time. And I struggled with it quite a lot. And, I'm doing this work, I'm trying to make a difference, and I still can't answer this. And so for me, through all of that contemplation, I came to the decision that every day when I wake up, I'm going to make sure that I do everything I can to make sure that my answer for that person is a yes, that my answer for somebody is yes, it's going to get better. And that's my challenge for you today. As we're going through this, again, I know it's difficult. I know it's not the most fun thing to talk about, but I hope that you leave here with that determination of, every day I'm going to try to make that answer yes. And I know in your profession, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And there's so many ways that you already make that answer yes for somebody. I have a long, history of being in places like this. I spent a lot of time in the hospital as a young boy. I was paralyzed from my waist down. And so I have the utmost respect for healthcare workers, just because of my personal experiences and everything that those individuals did for me to get me to where I am today, to actually be able to stand up here now and present to you. So I know that your jobs are already very demanding, and I don't want to add to that, but I hope that what we talk about is something that makes it easy for you to see those things that may already be happening right in front of you and give you easy access to respond to those. Because the reality is we don't know what we don't know. And so even as we're going through, you might see some things and you're like, I've seen that. Oh, I missed that. And I would encourage you, don't get into that mode where you're getting down on yourself because you didn't know what you didn't know. Today, we're going to go over those things. And from here on out, you will know, and you will know how to respond.
Did you get your homework done? Yes, Mom. Can you please leave? Thank you. finish my homework at Jessica's.
Again?
Yeah.
Okay, have fun.
Bye.
Hey, you have 1 hour. You have another appointment.
I know, it's not my first time.
I always hate that they use that song because I actually really like that song. But the reality is, I know this seems, it's a video. It's like, okay, well, that's a little extreme. This is happening every day right here in Montana, in our own towns, in our own cities. What are some things right off the bat that you notice that, like, we shouldn't be doing that? Anything stick out to you? I don't want to say like red flag, but things that could on the front end. What are some small things? And this isn't on the healthcare side. We're not into that, but just parents.
Yeah, parents oblivious.
Parents oblivious, not involved. We get a lot of the times people, they'll raise their hand and they're like, well, she's drinking wine and she shouldn't be drinking wine. That is not the correct answer. Yeah.
We never saw the mom's face.
Never saw the mom's face.
It was the slapping down of the laptop the minute the mom walked in the room.
Yep. Yep. And you're getting a lot. That's exactly right. And you're getting a lot closer to my soapbox that I'm about to stand on. Yeah. And where was that thing? And where was that thing?
Right next to the girl. In her room.
In her room, right? And I get flack for this all the time, but I'm going to continue saying it always. There's no reason a kid should have access to phone, computer, tablet, whatever, anything with access to online in the privacy of their own room. There's no reason that should ever take place. We always get the questions from like in our comeback rallies from parents, and they're like, well, what about their privacy? Which is so foreign to me because my parents aren't here, so you can't meet them, but you would totally understand. That just wasn't a thing growing up. And, you know, if we had any device, it was being checked. You know, when I got my phone, I could tell you like play by play the conversation, but I'll give you the short version. My dad handed me the phone. He said, just for the record, this is my phone. I'm going to let you use this phone. Anytime I want to see my phone, I will. Any password, anything, I know about it. If it gets changed, you tell me. And to this day, my sister is 33 years old, is married, has a kid, and she'll still just set her phone by him. And, you know, looking back, that's not something that I'm like, man, they were so restrictive and I didn't have any freedom. I'm so grateful for that protection that they put into place for me. You know, social media and all that, it can be a great tool, right? It can keep us connected. Internet, it offers so much. It's such a powerful tool. And I think, yeah, kids should have access to that. Everything good about it. But the truth of it is when you give your kid access to that, you give everyone out there access to your kid. So that's my soapbox there. But so what I want to do before we zoom in, I want to kind of back up and just look at kind of that 10,000 foot view of what it looks like, right? So 49.6 million is the number in modern day slavery. And to me, that is such a hard number for me to even comprehend. I'm not a wealthy man. If I wake up and I have an extra like $20 bill in my pocket, I'm feeling pretty good that day. You know, might buy some lunch, might walk out to the McDonald's and get myself, you know, maybe I'll add on the fillet of fish because I'm just feeling pretty good. So when we start talking about people at this scale, like I can't even wrap my mind around that. 85% female, 15% male. And you'll notice this is all through the International Labor Organization. We try really hard to, with any statistics that we use, we try to keep it kind of across the board. That's where we're gathering our information from. You know, I think that number speaks for itself. There's no reason that we need to try and amplify anymore what's going on by trying to pick the highest numbers from each category. So just for your knowledge, this is where we get our information. And then a breakdown of where this is taking place. Profits, again, 150 billion is just outrageous. And the reason that human trafficking is so prevalent, and I mean, bottom line, it's money, right? But if I have, and my terminology on this isn't great, so forgive me if I'm off on any lingo, but if I wanted to buy like an 8-ball of meth, right? That's going to cost me, or I'm going to be able to go and I can sell that for like $600 to $900, depending on the market. From there, I have to go back. I need to reproduce that product and then I can distribute it again. With a human trafficking victim, I can sell over and over and over and over. And when we're talking about pimps or traffickers, they're making off of one girl, I want to say the number's around north of $200,000 a year off of that one girl. And they're usually running more than one girl, one woman, man or boy for that matter, in their stable. So Polaris Project, I don't know if you've heard about Polaris Project. They run the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And so this is a heat map of just where the calls are coming from. I want to say they're based out of New Jersey. So when you see that heat map, big time over here. And I mean, we've got some heavily populated areas as well. Starts to make sense. But as we zoom in, even on Montana, we can see that we're starting to develop some pretty red areas as well. And before we proceed into this anymore, I want to, I guess, take a look at what does human trafficking look like in Montana. I mean, we hear a lot of the numbers, the 46 million, but it's important for us to be able to combat this, for us to understand this. We need to know what does it look like on our level in Montana. So another thing that we have done is little over 3 years ago, we launched the Montana Human Trafficking Hotline. Some of the experiences that we were having with the national hotline were not great. One example, our executive director, also my dad, he is also the chaplain for the Missoula County Sheriff's Office. So he was in at the Sheriff's Office one day and they got a call in about as a truck driver. And he said, hey, I've got what appears to be like, there are 2 girls, appear to be maybe like 13, 14 years old, knocked on my door and offered sex for money. And so this guy had been trained. So he made his call to law enforcement, hung up with them, and then he made a call to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, made the same report. This was on a Thursday. They, of course, sent deputies out. Unfortunately, by the time they got there, they were long gone and they were never able to find the girls. With that said, the following Tuesday, my dad was back in the sheriff's office and one of the detectives came up and he had a printed out email in his hand. He's like, yeah, chaplain, I'm glad you're here. We just got this report in. And it was for 2 girls, appeared to be 13 to 14 years old, offering sex for money to a truck driver just outside of Missoula. So it took that many days for that report to get to the people that it needed to get to. Thank God this truck driver had made the call to law enforcement. Again, they weren't able on this scenario to get there, but with proper training, he made both of those calls. So we knew that we needed to do something. We needed to have a tool that we were able to respond immediately to these calls that were coming in. And that's why we launched the hotline. So we're going to give a little breakdown on just what those numbers have looked like this year up through the end of November. And I'm going to have Anna come up and talk about that. Before she gets going, just a couple things to point out on the statistics, the graphs that you're going to see. First off, you'll notice the total number of calls, and then you're going to notice that in some of the graphs, like, okay, that many, and then they're not going to add up to 130 calls. So when somebody calls in, it is totally voluntary for them to give any information that they would like, and it is not a disqualifier. They can still receive help if they don't give that information. So if you have questions on that, that's the reason. Anna, I'll let you take it from here. Right there. I'll take it forward.
Okay, so this is the calls that we've been getting per month. I can't remember, there's a reason why July spiked.
Yeah, so July, they actually, through a partnership with the Attorney General's office, we were able to launch an ad campaign to get the hotline out there. And that's around the time that, that those ad campaigns were put on.
Mhm. So it's just the calls per month. This is the counties in Montana, so the counties in Montana, like he said before, the 45 is, they don't have to tell us where they are. That's why that one is so high, but 16 in Missoula, it's higher than most, but even like Raleigh, there's like not a lot of people there, there's still three contacts. This one is who's calling and who they're calling for. A lot of times people aren't calling for themselves. They're calling to call in a tip or something that they see or for someone they know. That's for further one over here. Like I was talking about, they're not usually calling for themselves. Community members and family are the higher reporters. There's a term, familial trafficking, sorry. That's when people are being trafficked within their families and within relatives. That's the second one here. And how they heard about the hotline, we launched that campaign. Again, a lot of times the reason that people call is they're reporting tips. They don't necessarily know for sure, but we'd rather you call and not know for sure than somebody could have just, something bad would happen if you didn't call, but it's not ever gonna hurt. Now I'll just let you look at it for a second. Part of our lifeline is people just calling for resources. If they have questions about what they can do, if they do see something, we do provide resources for where we can, because we are not always a resource, we direct people to resources. So that is this general information over here. And this is our phone number. The numbers first stop is 7867. If you want to write that down or take a picture of it.
Perfect. Yeah, I strongly encourage you to either take a photo, write it down. For me, with numbers like this, it definitely helps to just add them in as like a contact in my phone. Then, if it ever is a situation where I need access to that number, I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to try and decipher, what does stop go to again? It's just in there. But yeah, so the statistics that we gather and the hotline as a whole, there's, I guess, multiple benefits to it. And so first off, first and foremost, right, we are a resource. Somebody can call in if they're in need, they want to report a tip. We can be there to provide that service, whether it's directing them to the Lifeguard Group or whatever other resource may be more relevant to them. On the flip side, is also very valuable to us because with the national hotline, another thing that we weren't receiving was very good statistics. And so it was hard for us when we get the question of, right, is this really happening here? Yes, we know it is because we're working in this field, we're responding to this every day. But at that point, we didn't have anything concrete to point at. And so now we can, we have numbers that we can look at and be like, this is what's happening right here. This is where the calls are coming from. Another I guess, important part about gathering these and like on the contacts per county. It's important because it shows us first off, where are the hot spots for us, right? Where are the most contacts coming from? But then also, is the number getting out there? Are we doing a good job at making sure that everybody that may need access to this resource, do they have it? So again, it's first and foremost, we're there to respond and help with whatever that caller, or they can also text or chat in. But then secondly, it just gives us a much better understanding of what it looks like here at home. If you didn't get the number, I'll throw that up at the end as well. So in the year 2000, the Victims Protection Act officially went into law, so in the United States. So that's one of those things where it's like, good job, we did it. But then you also look at it and you're like, how did it take us so long to say, like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be like buying and selling humans. We should make a law about this. So it's one of those like, it's good, but what the heck happened? So with that said, you can see that Montana actually waited until 2015 to enact that law. We were actually in a group of a few states that took the longest to bring this into law, and we were called the Faltering Four. And let's see, it was us, North, South Dakota, and I think Arkansas were the last four. My dad, he always says he grew up in Sydney, so about as eastern Montana as you can get, and he's even more offended by that Faltering Four. I think it mostly comes from like sports and things like that, but he's like, any list that we're on with North and South Dakota, we need to get off that right now. So again, we figured it out, but it's that, why did it take us so long? Up until this year, actually, this last legislative session, if you were a purchaser, a John, looking to buy sex and you were caught, what do you think, up until, again, this last session, what's the punishment for that?
6 months.
6 months? Any other guesses? What was it?
Misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor, and I think it was up to like a $5,000 fine. The average fine was $125. Yeah, but again, right, so that's first offense. So we're Montana, right? We're gonna, what's the second offense?
126.
You're off by one. It's the exact same thing for the second. Yeah.
So is that against trying to buy sex from children or buy sex from
No,
anyone?
children was much more severe. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But
This
if
is
if
underage.
you're trying to buy from another adult.
Yep.
And you're
That's
saying.
Yeah, misdemeanor and small fine. Again, you've got the maximum. That's not what it was. The average was right around that 125. Second time, same exact thing. But what about the third time?
Did they go in the registry?
No,
I bet
still
they don't.
misdemeanor. Probably 125. Yeah, it is.
Nailed it. Same exact thing. It wasn't until the fourth time that it was a felony. Thank goodness, we have had, with this last legislative session, there's been some amazing work that has been done. Politics aside, we've had the opportunity to work closely with both the governor and the attorney general, and all the work that they put into pushing these different laws through is amazing. I would encourage you to go and read into that if you're interested. The punishments for that have gone way up. They actually have added a minimum like prison sentence, and I think I think the maximum might have dropped by like a year or something like that, but it was so that they could bump up the minimum. And then the fines, I believe, are through the roof. So we're gaining traction and we're moving in the right direction. But at the same time, I think it's important to know, like, it's taken us a while to get things figured out. So before we really dive in, it's important that we know just definition. What is human trafficking? So when we talk about human trafficking, right, we've got sex trafficking and we've got labor trafficking. A lot of times you're most likely going to hear kind of on the sex trafficking side, but in Montana, labor trafficking is alive and well, unfortunately. But to break it down, the sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining, which is important. A lot of times we talk about the purchaser or the John, and in our minds we somehow like separate. That is just as much human trafficking as it is for the trafficker or the pimp. Of a person for a commercial sex act in which commercial sex act is induced by, pay attention to these, they're going to come up a lot, force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the things that we need to prove to say that, hey, this is sex trafficking. We've got to prove that there was force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. So if they are a minor, that force, fraud, and coercion doesn't need to be proven, it's implied. Okay? And for labor trafficking, we've pretty much got the same definition. It's just the purpose that changes, right? So the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. So to break these definitions down, right? Got our action, means, and purpose. So when we're building a case, we've got to basically pluck one thing from each of these columns. And again, we've got our force, fraud, and coercion. So 85% are women and girls that are accounted for in modern day slavery. %75 is sexual exploitation. Sorry, I thought I misspelled a word there for a second. Would not be the first time. And then 50% of victims are those under the age of 18. That was like my ADD moment. So I want to make sure we want to break these down and kind of define that force, fraud, and coercion pieces, what those are, because we need to have a good understanding before we can, really put that whole picture together. So force, this one is a little easier for us to kind of wrap our heads around. It's that physical assault, sexual assault, rape, confinement, or isolation.
Right here in the middle of Plano, shops at Legacy, where a 17-year-old girl escaped from a violent human trafficker she had been with for a year. If not for some observant witnesses watching nearby and intervening, authorities say it's likely she would still be in his clutches. It's security camera video of two people talking outside a nail salon in Plano's shops at Legacy. You probably wouldn't pay much attention to them until the male stomps hard on the female's foot. It's followed by a violent punch that knocks her to the ground. I feel sick to my stomach. And for all of us who have daughters, it's just the most unthinkable situation you can imagine. Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis says you're watching the brutal violence associated with human trafficking play out in public. A passerby notices the man dragging the 17-year-old girl by her hair to the car, throw her into the open passenger side door and close it. She quickly opens it and escapes. By that time, several witnesses were ready to intervene, and the man speeds off by himself. I'm so proud of those citizens that were there and didn't run away and didn't turn a blind eye. 29-year-old Ricky Stevenson was later captured and sentenced last week to 59 years in prison. Willis says that's a message to traffickers like this one, who flaunt being a pimp on social media, force their victims to get loyalty tattoos, as well as threaten them if they try to leave. He thought that he can manipulate the legal system here in Collin County by ensuring that the victim not show up. He thought if the victim didn't show up, he would be free. The victim was only 16 when she was kidnapped and forced into prostitution along with 2 other females. This Collin County case is the first known anywhere involving a trafficker who was convicted only with the testimony from witnesses and no cooperation from the victim.
When you're asked to testify, you are basically opening yourself up to being re-traumatized or let's say re-victimized.
Chelsea Robertson with Poet, a nonprofit that offers schooling and...
So do you ever have where you're hearing something, but then you're seeing something and they don't quite line up, like, you know, group of brave individuals that were ready to intervene? Did anybody actually see that take place in that video?
No, I
Man.
didn't think they acted fast enough.
Yeah.
I thought he said observant witnesses, so I'm thinking, oh, they're speaking in code, he's probably just being a little forceful. No, he's beating the crap out of her and shooting.
Yeah.
Like, no, you just didn't want to be an outright good person.
Yeah, exactly
Had he
right.
not been beating her, they absolutely would have just let her go.
Mhm.
And that's
And I mean, the only real action I saw was the guy in the corner going like,
looking around.
Like
somebody
this.
else to come in and be little.
and I mean, the only one that had maybe kind of an excuse was like the guy, I don't know if you saw him in the bottom corner with his pizza box and his liter of cola walking out. It's like, man, I have to just put this down. But first off, liability says that I'm supposed to tell you, like, okay, don't intervene, like, keep yourself safe. The fact that I've got 3 sisters, and if this was one of them, that part of me says, like, please do something. And I'm not saying you have to jump in and be physical, but I mean, make a phone call, yell, like, do something. Truth of the matter is, and I think you could see it fairly well in that video, these individuals that, these traffickers, pimps, whatever we want to call them, they're looking for the vulnerable. They're looking for those who they think they can manipulate. They are not strong individuals. If they are confronted, I'd say 10 times out of 10, but just to be fair, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to run. They're not going to hang around. And that's the reason, like, they're not going after strong women, right? They're going after, they're going to find their vulnerability. They're going to pry at that, whatever that might be.
Trust that the kid ran away. It's like,
She was brave.
yeah.
Yeah. And the number of times that she kept getting out, which
Getting punched in the face and knocked to the ground.
exactly. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's huge. The fact that not only that, I mean, wanting to get, but that she was willing to stand up and to him in that way, with all that we know about the like psychological just manipulation and the abuse, and that's a scary thing to even, I can't put myself into that place, but I can try, and I can see how difficult that step would be. But yeah, again, liability, but yeah, blah, blah, blah. I say, yeah, intervene in whatever way you feel comfortable.
Yeah, and for the onlookers, there's some term, I just remember this in sociology, a diffusion of responsibility. Like you're thinking the next guy's gonna do something or the next gal, and then so nobody does anything.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a pretty phenomenon that occurs in those situations.
Yeah.
Why people don't,
Mhm.
they think the next guy's gonna do better.
Yeah, well, and I'd bet money on the fact if that first guy, this dude, if he would have stepped in and just grabbed a hold of that girl or got between, that guy would have been long gone. Even with people just looking on, you could see how frantic he
Well, I
was.
thought that one guy was his partner. I figured, oh, that's his buddy,
Yeah,
because he wasn't moving.
yeah.
He should be fracked. It's just-
So fraudulent employment offers, false promises about work and living conditions, and withholding wages. Obviously, a lot of these kind of line up a lot on the labor trafficking side as well, at least for me. This is the one that labor trafficking really seems to stick out. And I think it's because we actually worked with a woman here in Montana that, I mean, she ticked all the boxes. Was promised good work, ended up to where she was working just unbelievable hours. She was living in a basement, and she paid $600 rent every month to live with, I think, 25 other people in that basement. Her son, he only had to pay $200 a month for rent because he lived in the closet. And then she would get her full paycheck. I think they were paying her $4,000 a month. She'd get her full paycheck every month. And then she would be, basically her employer would go with her to the bank. She'd go in, cash that check, and then he would have all the amounts that she owed, whether that was supplies, tools, whatever it might be, leaving her just enough to maybe get some food, pay her rent. And we were able to get her out of that situation. She's in a very good place now. But the trouble really came when she got her W-2, and now she's in a spot where she's like, I can't pay this. I don't have any money. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but a lot of times the individuals that we're talking about, the victims, they're not gonna identify as a victim. And I'm sure you see that in different areas, whether it's sexual abuse in other ways or what it might be. But she didn't know until she started communicating this to somebody because she was worried about her taxes. It was she went to a job service, I think, center and was communicating this to him. She's like, I just don't know what to do. And he was able to actually contact us via the hotline, and we were able to help out with that. But it is definitely happening. And then coercion, threats to life, safety, family members, threats of deportation and arrest. That was actually with this individual I was just speaking about. That's something that we dealt with her. Am I standing like right in here? Debt bondage and withholding legal documents, right? Threatening to get people deported, which I could tell you right now, if you've got somebody that comes in here and that's their worry, at this point in time, I can promise you, like, nobody is being deported right now. So whatever you want to do with that information. And then psychological manipulation. We've worked with a lot of individuals that if it would have been the trafficker would have been just threats to their lives, like I will kill you if you don't do this, wouldn't faze them one bit. But then comes in the threats to family, and they've got them. One girl in particular that we worked with and still work with, it was her niece that was being threatened, and it was, I found you, I got you. How easy do you think it'll be for me to get your niece, who was, I think, 4 or 5 at the time? And that was it for her. He is now in prison for a very long time. And just to give you an idea of what that psychological manipulation really is, because I don't think you can ever really fully understand it unless you've experienced it. But for her, even after he was put away, we're sitting in a room and somebody walks through the door, she 100% expects it to be him. She believed that he was watching her no matter where she was, that he had people that were reporting back, but it just, he owned her mind. And that's the level that we're dealing with.
Hi, Zach. Here's another video from our special guy. I can't believe we haven't talked all day. I wish you went to my school or closer so we could finally meet. Take it in an hour. Don't spend too long with them. I know you've been waiting for this for a while. I wanted to give you something special. It's okay. Who are you? Why are you doing this?
What did we see on the front end that we could have changed to avoid this whole thing?
Sorry, my tongue tripped over my teeth. She showed him her whole house. Cause she was video camming with him before she got into the room.
Okay.
Therefore showing the windows, cause it was light, so he could absolutely look in and just find her house.
Giving away too much information. Yeah. Come on, there's one that we already talked about.
She's just on the phone.
Yeah.
Why is she video chatting with some dude on the phone?
Mhm.
And when her mom,
Why is that happening?
and then if her mom walks off and here's her door knock it, nobody needs to turn around and say, I don't know, kids just will lie and hide it from you just to win it, just to win the struggle.
Yeah, now I'm gonna tee this up for you guys. Put it on the tee. We talked about it earlier. Where were the devices? Exactly right. Devices in the room. Just hop back on that soapbox whenever I can.
Do you have
But
children?
I don't.
Oh.
I don't. I don't.
They are not gonna have any fun.
I grew up 3 sisters, no brothers, so I developed a somewhat protective personality, I guess. So, but yeah, it's even more so, I guess, than that though. The number of experiences and cases that we've dealt with this exact thing, like we've termed it sextortion at this point. And essentially, if I can get you to engage in one act of shame, I own you at that point. And when we're talking about kids, I mean, reality is kids are vulnerable because they're kids. Yeah, they got more vulnerabilities, but they're vulnerable because they're kids. And this is another, doesn't have to do with the healthcare training, but I'm going to say it because I know that there's parents in the room. We need to be having these conversations. They're not fun. They're uncomfortable. Your kids aren't going to want to talk about it. But from my experiences just in the schools, like, I don't know what it is, but there's a wall there and kids do not realize that they can come and talk to somebody. So if we could catch this stuff on the front end and hopefully it just never happens to begin with, like we can have that conversation and it's heard and this just never happens. But if anything ever does happen, now we've got that open line of communication that hopefully they're going to be willing to come to you and talk to you about this. This is actually a true story. This video is based on true events, and she actually ended up taking her life because of this.
I feel like if we kill the curiosity of, oh, if I talk to this, I think that's just like anything, sense. I think kids, if they're educated and early, when they're young, younger, I know it's like taboo, but the younger we can make them later and educate them and feel that curiosity, I think it's gonna help them.
Yeah, I think, and so for our school programs, right, we usually do like middle school, high school age. And then that's a big part of like the comeback rally for parents is because these conversations need to happen. I'm not going to be the one to talk to your 10-year-old about sex and sex trafficking, but they need to happen. I mean, I think it's been a year ago now in Frenchtown. I mean, exact scenario played out. And So again, if we can, as parents, I mean, this isn't just happening to kids either, it's happening to adults. If we can have these conversations, just put that in place, you know, even, hey, I might be mad. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be mad if this happens, but like I'm always here. I'm always somebody that you can talk to. Putting those things in place is huge.
I noticed one thing too, and how the parents didn't notice it. Her physical appearance had changed.
That's a very good catch, yeah.
I mean, she was peppy, happy, smiley, makeup on and stuff, and then that last bags under her eyes, dark circles.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just the physical appearance was changed completely.
Yeah, exactly right. And
I'm just gonna add, to the situation with Frenchtown, was the boy.
yeah,
The young
yeah,
boy, so I think that's something to.
yeah,
It's not this girl.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Thank you for that. That's very important. One of the other things that I've more recently in watching this have noticed is when she's first getting ready to send the video, she says, I know you've been waiting for this for a long time. So that gives us kind of a picture or a view into the grooming process as a whole. It's like, it doesn't, and some of them are, right? It's going to be either they're going to send it to me or I'm going to move on. But a lot of these guys, a lot of these women that are looking to exploit vulnerable individuals, they're willing to wait. They're willing to work for it. As you can see at the end, or with that video at the end, sliding it into her file, there's how many others there. They're willing to put in the work. They know what they're looking for. I don't like to give them credit, but in this arena, they're very smart and they know how to get what they want. They know what they're looking for. Yeah. Just one more time, just to burn those into your brains, force, fraud, and coercion. Let's, we've been going for about an hour now. We'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back in if you need to grab food, use the restroom. This is all for those 2 individuals or so that are willing to get up otherwise.
Allie, I'm gonna go get my glasses.
This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
We'll just let people file in as they do, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to dive in now to a little more healthcare professional specific. Again, throughout, if you've got questions, comments, anything like that, you've already done great at that, but I want you to chime in. Big reason for that is, like, we can come in and I'm going to give you the best like overview and understanding as I can for healthcare professionals. But there's no like one size fits all, right? I don't know what you go through on a day-to-day basis, what your experiences are. So if there's things that you've got questions or comments on, please, that's just going to help us make this even more targeted to this facility specifically. So what's the role of healthcare professionals? First off, it's to recognize and respond human trafficking in what is an emergency context. Understanding the scope of human trafficking in the United States, the potential health impacts for victims. We'll go over those. Identifying signs, the individual is potentially a victim of human trafficking. We're going to go over the red flags and the indicators. And then identifying situations that may indicate human trafficking. What things can you be looking for, be alert of? Not that you have to have that radar going 24/7, but if we educate ourselves and prepare ourselves when those things do arise, we'll be ready to recognize and hopefully respond to those. So when we talk about human trafficking in the healthcare network, I guess, there's not going to be one, it's not just, okay, we need to focus all of our time on pregnancy centers or clinics or whatever it might be. There's going to be, human trafficking is going to basically touch healthcare in a lot of different areas for a lot of different reasons. So we don't want to get stuck in that mindset where it's like, oh, we don't got to worry about that here. Like the pregnancy center, they should be the ones having this training, right? We need to understand that it can happen right here and we can play a role in it. So pediatrics, right? And again, as we're looking through, I'm not going to go through and read all these to you. I think everybody here can read, scanning to see if anybody's like looking down, like not me, because then I'll read them for you. But I understand that some of the things that we're going to go over in these different areas, they can present in for a lot of different reasons, right? Just because a kid comes in with a broken arm doesn't mean like, hey, that was on the slideshow. This is human trafficking. What we're looking for is things to start kind of stacking up in different ways where we're like, this has potential to be a situation that we need to report. Just as I said, at broken bones, there's going to be from pimps, traffickers. It could be on the like grooming or initiation side, whether that's somebody receiving a beating, you might see broken bones, might be from a John or a purchaser, and the abuse that they received there. Pregnancy centers, definitely. We've done a lot of trainings for pregnancy centers. Whether that's a victim that's coming in on her own, we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but victims oftentimes, and I think we already touched on it, but victims oftentimes, they don't realize that they are victims. They don't understand that, or they're not in a place where they're gonna most times self-identify. So even through just targeted questions, we can start to get some more information and build off of that. But it also might be something smaller town, pregnancy centers where a trafficker is comfortable bringing a girl there because he's not going to think that there's been any training in that facility. Infectious disease. This is still going to come into play a lot of times on the front end. There may be treatment that has been performed by a doctor, right? The pimp or trafficker's doctor that they've got on the payroll. And of course, they're not going to be in the best facilities, probably not going to be done the right way. And we may have the opportunity to be in contact with these victims, these individuals on the tail end of that while treating the results of those poorly performed procedures. ED, of course, again, there's going to be stuff where it doesn't mean just because you see one of these that it's human trafficking, but as things start to stack up, yeah, the abuse and the beatings that victims can take is real. We've got time, we'll get into different styles that different individuals, traffickers, pimps will use. You've probably heard, if you've taken like a training human trafficking before or anything like that, that you've got like Romeo style pimps that they're going to do more on the finesse side, like on the boyfriend, build that relationship that way. You've got pimps that are they're just going to use abuse. After that grooming is done and they've got that individual, they're just going to inflict pain to get their point across. And this is important too, is that oftentimes they are going to try to target their abuse to areas that might go unnoticed. A lot of times we'll see like cigarette burns in the hairline happen a lot of times. There's and I don't know the reason behind it, but have you ever, like, anybody that has kids probably has experienced this, because I know I did this to my parents when I was a kid. But have you ever got just that little pinch, like on the back of the arm, like on the tricep, and it's just a little bit of skin, but it hurts like freaking crazy? That pimps like, they call it pimp pinch. And they'll just grab that little bit of skin and they just pinch with their nails, and oftentimes they'll like maybe pull off skin, open up wounds. So that's definitely something to look for in that area as well. It's kind of a easy, almost more so like hard to notice thing that they can deliver a message without too many people catching on. And rural clinics, again, this kind of goes back to what I said before with they're going to target areas where they think that people aren't going to know any better, that are untrained. They're going to think it's an easy in and out. They can get whatever they need to taken care of, and nobody will be the wiser. So now we are going to, this is like my fun little animation. We're going to put the pieces together. So as healthcare professionals, you all have this, but we've all got that internal radar. But I would argue that as healthcare professionals, you have like even more so a more intense version of that radar. And my mind always goes back to watching movies with my grandpa, like war movies, and there'd be the scene in the submarine, right? And there's the radar that's going round and round. And the thing is, nobody working in that area, they're not paying any mind to the radar until what?
It peaks.
Yeah, until there's a blip on the screen. And as healthcare professionals, that's where we need to be. Again, I'm not asking you to focus all of your energy and thoughts on this every day, but I'm asking you to get yourself to a place that that radar is still going. And when you hear that blip, okay, now we need to focus in, we need to recognize, we need to respond. So again, this kind of goes back to that other slide, but we need to, identify and respond appropriately, asking questions, right, without being too direct. Again, oftentimes victims aren't going to know that they're victims, so flat out asking, are you a victim of human trafficking, is probably not going to be the most effective way. But asking some targeted questions, can you leave work if you want to? Have you ever been hurt or threatened? Obviously, that can be in multiple avenues. But end of the day, if we go through this and you ask these questions and you help somebody out of a different abuse situation, like that's still a big win for using these tools. And then, do you know how to get help if you need it? And I think that's a very important question, and we were just discussing, and we'll discuss it more. But as healthcare professionals, this can be that safe place for a victim. This can be a place where, hey, every time I go in there, like they're kind to me, I know it's safe, and maybe the first time that they're in, it's still, I can't bring myself to ask for help. I can't bring myself to say that something is going on. But maybe that fourth time, maybe even that seventh or eighth time, the trust is going to start to grow, and they're going to feel that, okay, I can start to open up to these people. Because reality is, it might not be the same person, right, the seventh or eighth time that they met that first. But if we can have that habit, I guess, or that word's gone from me. But if we can all respond generally in that same way and provide that safe and supportive place where they can start to trust, that's huge. And that's where that person is going to finally feel comfortable to open up. If by, if some way they're able to get away from their trafficker, like that's the place that they're going to run, the place that they know to be safe, place that they know people are going to listen, that they're going to do everything that they can to help them. Back to the, they might not identify as a victim. What they might tell you is that they have been sexually assaulted. And that's where we can start back in with some of those targeted questions to get that bigger picture of what is actually going on. And then just a list of a few pieces that we can recognize as far as, again, broken bones, anxiety. I mean, I've got anxiety. I'm not trafficked, I promise. But some things that we can start to stack together along with those targeted questions to build a picture of what's really happening. So in line with this radar, there's a book that I'm going to recommend to you. And if you do not read this book, like, you are doing a huge disservice to yourself. It's phenomenal, I think, especially in your line of work. This is something that I think I would guess that you use on a daily basis. But the book is The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And we'll have a couple other quotes throughout this by him. But he says, you have the gift of a brilliant internal guardian that stands ready to warn you of hazards and guide you through risky situations. This gift that he's talking about, as men, oftentimes we like to call it like a gut feeling because it sounds a little more macho. Generally, women, I hear it as like intuition, because it's a little softer, whatever you call it. It is real, and it is such an important tool. And again, I would imagine that you find yourself using it on a daily basis. My hope is that you will listen to this. If you're in a situation and with a patient and things maybe aren't feeling right and this like internal thing is just going off, listen to that thing, because it's going to be right. But yeah, one more plug. Please, if you haven't, get that book, read it. Our whole team has read it, and it's done wonders for us. So this is an important piece. You're used to fixing everything. Like, obviously, this place that we're in, it's the business that you're in. Somebody comes in, they're broken, you're supposed to put them back together. But the thing is, when we're having these encounters, our goal, it's not to get disclosure, it's to help them feel safe, it's to help them feel confident. And like we were talking with those down the line, right? It's to get to that place where they feel like they can reach out when they're ready. Ideally, that's that first interaction, right? Wouldn't that be great if that's just the way it went? Just first time, we got you, boom, I'm going to send you a Lifeguard Group safe house. Fantastic. It's not the way it usually plays out. But setting ourselves up to make this a possibility down the line is huge. This is also vital, letting the patient play an active role in the decision making. Up to the point where you're going to interact with them, if they're in that place, they haven't had any say over what happens to them, what they're doing. They just are doing what they're told. So it can go a long ways giving them a say in what's going to happen. Even down to communicating, like you're reporting requirements to that person so they're not feeling blindsided after confiding in you. It's important to communicate that, let them be a part of that process. Because end of the day, it's not our goal to save, but it is to assist. And that's what all that adds up to. And that's a difficult thing, honestly, in a way for me to say, because my natural instinct is like, if I see that that's happening, like I'm scooping you up and we're freaking out of here. Like I'm saving. But truth is, like, it's a process a lot of times to get them into that place, that grooming process, all that manipulation and trauma that has been done. It's going to be a process to get out the other side. That's why at our safe house, right, we've got a minimum of 8 months. That's like bottom line. That's how long you need to be here, because it's a process. Oftentimes it's going to take even longer than that. And realistically, even after they leave, it's going to be a lifetime of continuing to make sure that they're keeping up with all of that. So we need to look forward to what happens when a victim gets discharged. What happens, where are they gonna go? And this, obviously, shelters, meals, therapies, that's on the side that we hope that it goes, right? That they're willing to take help. But it's good for us to have resources, protocols in place so that if this happens, it's not a, oh crap, what do we do now? Like, we talked about it, we didn't set anything up, like, who do I call, what do we do now? Having things in place, you know, such as shelters, if that's a need, it's vital. And it's a big part of maintaining that trust as well, saying that you can help somebody, and then on, you know, when it's the prove it moment, we need to be able to follow through. And again, we need to be ready to mobilize resources. As far as that goes, that hotline is a great resource if you're in the front end of that scenario. Back to keeping that open communication, we've actually had a lot of contacts from healthcare, and the ones that go the best is when they've had that active role in making the choice to make that call. Because reality is sometimes they're just not ready, but when they are, then they're all in, and they're willing to talk to whoever they need to, and there's got to be a lot of buy-in for like a safe house or a shelter, because it is a long-term commitment. But yeah, making sure that we have those ready and that they're ready to mobilize when that person is discharged. Yes.
So do we not make that phone call right off the bat when we see this when they come in? I mean, you're just kind of saying they might come in 7 or 8 times.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if we do make that phone call?
So it depends. Well, and I don't know what your exact like reporting protocols are or requirements, but the one nice thing like with the hotline, if that's a resource that you're going to utilize in that scenario, unless it's like a minor, if you call and it's a kid that's in danger, like we're reporting it. Outside of that, if it's an adult, like that's, we can help best we can with the information that we have. And then we can kind of work through that process together so that when they are ready, maybe we can have some of those resources available. So to answer your question, if you can make that call, and you don't have to give us all the information. If you're just looking for, hey, if this person comes back, I want to be ready, we can get you some of those resources set up so that, again, you are ready to respond and mobilize those things when that time comes. So great question though. But yeah, as far as that, letting them be involved in that, that's more of, you know, if you call us, I'm not going to come in, swoop her up, and it's like, you're with us now. But when it's going to have that direct impact on them, and you know where they currently are, that's when we want to make sure that they're involved. Great question.
Yeah, I just want to comment too, because I've done a lot with volunteered for domestic violence and stuff, and I had a lot of Navy experience with this. This sounds a lot like the domestic violence kind of reporting, you know, it's just, it's a different, I'm looking at this as like a spectrum of abuse for different people, and like domestic violence, if they're an adult, you know, it's really up to them. But if they're a child, then it's mandatory reporting.
And that's what makes it so difficult and frustrating sometimes too, is it's like, because it is, you get to that point where you're kind of like, I just wish I could make you do what's best for you. But yeah, in reality, I mean, they've got to come to that place where they're ready to take that step. I guess I'd say unfortunately, because again, I'd like to just be like, no, you're getting better now. Like you're getting to a safe place now. And a lot of it does, it goes right back to that not being in the place to self-identify that I'm a victim. So until they can get somewhat to that place, then why would I need this? You know, why would I need this help if I'm not a victim? But yeah, building up that community and trust, when you can get to that place where you can communicate more so those things, that can help with that process too. Yeah. And great point, thank you. Okay, I was almost gonna skip this. So this is why I believe it is so important for us to train healthcare. I mean, any contact with healthcare, almost 90% in some way, shape, or form. I think that number alone, without any of this, shows us that, okay, we need to be ready to recognize and respond to this. We need to have protocols in place. But this is where these individuals that we're trying to help, this is where they're going for help, whether they're going on their own or their trafficker is bringing them into these places. This one, we always, it's kind of, what's the right word? My initial thought when I see that is, okay, she got pregnant, they're bringing her in for an abortion. But this can also be, this doesn't have to be purely like abortion clinics, right? This can be other, like other pregnancy centers can be into this as well. We've worked with individuals that trafficker actually wanted them to have the child as another level of manipulation, motivation for them to do what they want them to do.
And they could be bringing them there for birth control, you know, for all, you know, your
Yeah.
STD testing or something.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why many of us are here. We know that we don't.
Yeah.
We use no more.
Yeah, and that's not, yeah, that's one I throw up just for, to communicate. I'm not gonna jump on a soapbox on it because you're here and this is fantastic. But this is where we're at, and again, we don't know what we don't know. So that's why this is so vital. You're positioning yourself to play a huge role. When I say huge, I mean that number right there, role.
Speak sex trafficked. Okay, April, let's get you set up.
Where are you taking her?
We just need a urine sample, it'll just take a minute.
There's just so many people around, I don't want us to get separated.
Understood. You can wait outside the door with you, April. Okay, you just give it back to me when you're done, okay? How much longer is this going to take? We're gonna get right on it. April, we got your labs back and they are positive. You were definitely pregnant. Oh, okay.
It's okay, babe.
Since this is ectopic, the best way to resolve is surgery. Okay.
What kind of surgery?
A laparotomy is the best
Why are you
result.
lying to us?
I'm not.
The nurse just told me this could all be fixed with some pills.
Pills can be used with some ectopic,
But why not this one?
based on the gestational age of the embryo and where
Yeah, we'll take our chances with the pills. It's our choice, right?
well, it's April's choice. Look, I know you want to get out of here, but this is a super
Yeah,
simple
we're out of here.
procedure and
I showed that because I know how much healthcare workers love, like TV shows with healthcare stuff in, because of how accurate they are all the time, which I've learned a lot. We just do at-home surgery now at my house because I know so much. But with that aside, right, that's real, and this happens. If you couldn't see, when she went into the bathroom, the note on the door, she had made it out specifically to April. It said, you know, if you're in danger, write your name in red. If everything's fine, basically, just write it in the black pen. Wrote it in red, and, you know, that's, well, then we can start on the response side, right? So we've recognized, we've responded by putting that in there, and now we know. So just like, obviously, this didn't work out the way that she was hoping it would. And sometimes, like, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes that could happen. They could just leave. But what she was trying to do, and what I would encourage you to do, in situations where you don't know, like what can I do to create this separation? Like the trick with the pen and stuff, love it. Like that's a great tool to use. And I think we'll have a picture coming up of some other ideas like that. What's that? See, and that's fantastic. So you're already ahead of the game, because I can assure you, like a lot that we've done with these trainings, they don't have anything like that in place. But what that gives us, right, if we can get to that place where she's trusting enough, right, to communicate that, then lie, right? If you need to keep them there, just flat out lie. She just spouted off. I couldn't tell you what she said. Right? I have no idea. Well, it's gonna something laparotomy and this and that, like over my head. No idea. Same with that guy, right? The trip up, right? Maybe a breakdown of communication, lack of protocol. Obviously, with their setup, they didn't have anything in place. She was great. Filled the note out before she went in. But that's the importance too of building that protocol, things in place. Communication, what needs to be done there, because really a simple, hey, don't communicate that to him. We need to keep her here, and they're still there. But essentially what that allows us to do, what do we do from there? It gives us time. So if we can get time gives us a chance to gather resources to make a plan. As far as the last slide, whether that's getting law enforcement involved, whether that's finding a safe house for that person, whatever it is on that list. Lie to the point where you can create that separation, where you can keep them and get things in place. Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen fast. Like it's real life. It's not going to slow down for us when this scenario presents itself. So again, I know all of you can like spout off a bunch of stuff that I would have no idea what you're talking about. And I'd just be like, huh? That makes total sense to me. So that, I know it's just a TV clip, and they probably get a bunch of stuff wrong, but in that scenario, I love it because it is very real. Here's another strategy that's used, right? Tearing off a strip to communicate. And then back to the Sharpie. So you guys have that in your bathrooms, then, just like this? I love it.
We took it down because they weren't reading the sign.
But they should be back up because we talked about that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a easy, it's there. It's an easy thing for them to communicate without, again, they're in that place where they're feeling watched constantly. So if you can, in that kind of privacy, and they feel like it's a safe way to do it, that's huge. We worked with a credit union in Missoula, and of course, they're not taking people's urine samples. At least, I guess I haven't opened an account in a while, but I don't think they are at this point. But their strategy is they actually put a set of keys. They hung them in the bathroom with a sign, basically said, these keys are lost. If you're in danger or whatever, they decided to write on there, bring this to one of the clerks and we will help you.
Oh, wow. So
there's a lot of different ways, but it sounds like we've got some ways in place here, which is fantastic. And it means, yeah, you're definitely in the right spot there.
Because they're not in medical setting where you can go.
So when we start to try and dive into, right, that manipulation, that mindset that they're in, this is what a lot of these individuals, if not all, have experienced, right? So they've been kidnapped or tricked, forced or coerced, sold by families in Montana. Familial trafficking, as Anna mentioned earlier, is the #1 form of human trafficking. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that it's real and it's what we're dealing with in Montana. Runaways, again, vulnerabilities, they're going to find what that is, and they're going to exploit that. But with that said, this history, and it's not something that's like a one and done, it's just that repetitive. It gives a better understanding of why it takes that, all that time to gain that trust, right? We've had an experience, one of our team members, he actually approached a woman, we were doing a search at a big event, and he approached a woman and was, trying to be kind of covert. She was out on the street there, so he walked up facing the other way and started to talk like, hey, I know it's, we both know what's going on here. I can help you. I can get you to a safe place. And this woman turned to him, looked him right in the eye. She's like, I've heard that before, and that's exactly what got me here. So it can be frustrating. It can take time, but by keeping consistent in that way, we can build that trust to where they hopefully will get to a place where they're willing to come and talk and receive help. Okay, so we're going to focus on
I
the
was
victim.
12 years old when I first got trafficked. My home life was very violent because of the things that I've been through in my life, being sexually molested at a young age, having a family member not believe me when I told them that it happened by the hands of a family member. I felt that no one was there to protect me and no one cared or loved me. When I was 12 years old, I was a runaway. I was just walking around the streets and a guy pulled up beside me and asked me if I was okay. I told him I was fine and I started to walk away and it started to rain. He was like, well, just come sit in the car with me until the rain stops. I was cold and wet, so I agreed. I was basically kidnapped and sold for days. So from that moment on, I just stayed in the streets. I couldn't imagine myself getting out of that situation. I felt worthless. I had little to no self-esteem. I would literally work early in the morning and I would see kids my age going to school. And it was hard for me to look at those kids because there was a lot of shame. The one way that I was able to get a break from the life was to basically go into a store and steal in plain sight while my pet was outside of the car. If I was caught stealing, I would eventually get arrested and I would go to juvenile hall. For most girls or most kids, they would see it as a punishment, but it was structure in my life. It was a safe place and I knew that no one would be able to harm me. My life basically changed once I was beaten by my pimp. And I was in a hospital for a short stint of time, and I knew that this was my way out. I was turning 18, and there was no more safety net. So if I was to get in trouble, if I was to steal to get away from him, I was going to the county, and that was a whole other world that I did not want to be a part of. So I took that opportunity to leave California in hopes of leaving the life. I realized that I was a victim, and then I became a survivor, and now I am a warrior. What I would tell the 12-year-old me, I would tell the 12-year-old me that it's going to get better. I would tell her that your life may seem like it's being sacrificed right now, but it's going to help so many other women. So just keep on going.
So I know we went over earlier the definition of human trafficking, but to simplify it, what we at the Lifeguard Group, I guess, how we communicate what human trafficking is at its core. It is the exploitation of vulnerabilities. So as we were watching this film, what were some of Tika's vulnerabilities?
She's 12.
Bad homework.
Bad home life? Yep,
Experience sexual assault.
definitely.
And mistrust, and because when she reported it, they didn't believe her.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else?
Didn't have anywhere to go.
Good.
No support system.
No support system. Think even simpler, right? She's the night that she is in the car.
It was raining.
What? Yeah. She was cold and wet. And she says it like really quick, right? She just kind of skims over it. But it's like this small thing. I was cold and wet, so I got in the car. Because the first time, if you remember, right? He asked her the first time and she shut him down. Like, no. And then I was cold and wet, so I got in the car. So with that, I point that out to show that in some way, shape, or form, either we are now or we will be, we're all vulnerable. So who can this happen to? Who can the victim be? Anyone. We worked with victims from, I don't know the youngest, but all the way up to when we met her, 75. So I want to say she's probably 78 or 9 now, down to, yeah, very young. But we've all got vulnerabilities. And these individuals, they know what they're looking for. In some cases, it's as simple as it was raining, so I got in the car. Obviously, all the ones that we said before play a huge role into the whole scenario. So for Tika, what was her escape?
Yeah.
Stealing in plain sight so that she could get sent to juvie. And then, what's that? Mm-hmm. He stole it. He stole my phone. But then another spot I like to point out, right? So she has been in the life, and she is in a city that she's not from. She doesn't know these people, and she's finishing work right early in the morning, and she's walking past a school of kids her age, and she doesn't know these kids, and yet she's feeling this immense amount of shame for where she's at, for all these things she's been forced to do. And that just even more so gives us a glimpse into that mindset, that what that manipulation is like, the tools that they can use. Again, shame piece plays such a major role, even back to the sextortion that we were talking about. If I can get you engaged in one act of shame, I own you at that point. And then since nobody said it already, what was like the ultimate who helped her the most at the very end? The hospital, right? That played a huge role for her. And she kind of skims over it, to the point where you even like are like, oh, did she go to the hospital and then she left the hospital and got on a plane? But no, she said that's where she knew she had to make a choice, because next step, she was going to prison, right? She was gonna turn 18 and the juvie run was over. And I think that, yeah, she skims over it, but to think that she came to a place like this where it sounds like beatings were a regular part of her existence at that point. So I'd venture to say that maybe it wasn't the same one, but it wasn't her first visit to a hospital, to a medical center, clinic, whatever it might be. But that she felt like that was the safe place to ask for help is huge. So again, talking about vulnerabilities, we went over a few of these, but it really sums up to we all are vulnerable in some way, shape, or form, and we can be at risk. So being not only on guard in our daily lives, but for those that we serve, but also on guard for ourselves, for our kids, for our family. Having these conversations is so vital. Told you to come back up. Gift of fear, Gavin DeBecker. It is understandable that the perspectives of men and women on safety are so different. Men and women live in different worlds. At core, men are afraid women will laugh at them. Well, at core, women are afraid that men will kill them. That was a hard one for me to like wrap my head around it, right? It's like, oh, classic guy saying that. But it is like, it's fact. I've had this conversation with my wife. We're in Missoula, where my office is. It's downtown Missoula, big city. But at night, we do have quite a homeless population. And where our office is, there's generally at least one, probably more, homeless sitting on the street on the walk. This time of year, right, it gets dark at 2 p.m., right? So you're walking to your car in the dark. For me, I get done with work, put on my coat, and walk to my car. There's somebody that I just go to my car, right? I notice him for sure, but I'm going to my car. I'm thinking, what are we having for dinner tonight? For my wife, that's a whole different story, right? She is on guard of what is this guy going to do to me, checking to make sure that there's nobody else. We have a completely different existence in that.
And then my in-laws live in Billings, and my sister-in-law has told me they have 3 little girls too. They're teenagers now. And she has, even at teenage, her kids hold on to the cart because people pinpoint them in the store, follow them, like kind of trying not to discreet, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But they have people that they're talking to out in the parking lot, and there's several groups of people targeting these people. It's just great. In Billings.
Yeah, and I've heard stories on stories of the same kind of thing. Yeah, but out of that story, like that gives me hope that there's awareness, right? Like there's awareness of surroundings, which is fantastic. I keep feeling like I try to walk back and talk to you guys, but then I'm like, this camera, so I'm not ignoring you. I just can't make it back there. So we're going to dive into just some different maybe indicators, red flags. But so first off, victims, right? Trafficker they're going to remove a victim from all of their resources, right? End of the day, they want when crap hits the fan, right? They want, when they turn around, everything that they would originally run to is gone. So and it doesn't have to be a physical like removal, like kidnapping, get them away. Sometimes it is, but it might be driving wedges between family, between friend groups, kids, right? Removing from extracurricular activities that they used to love and now they're apart from it. And just creating that separation to where when they get to that place where it's like, oh no, like I'm in it, I need help. They don't have any resources. And maybe they do, right? Because I know if I was in that place, and I don't know everyone's family, but I know if I was in that place and I had created that separation, it doesn't matter what I did, what I said. If I called my family, they're there. But the trick is right here for me. Because even though I know right now I'm in a healthy place that they would respond that way, it's that manipulation that I feel I cannot go back to them. I can't go to my friends. I've got nothing else.
The controller sometimes makes you believe that your family and those guys are the bad people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And even resources as basic as money, right? Removing anything that you could use to get away, right? They're gonna control the funds. I say he a lot, just a lot of times it is a male. We are seeing a big rise in females on like the side of being the trafficker as well. Some of that I believe to be skewed slightly, just purely off of, so forgive my language, but when trafficker, right, I'm gonna have my stable of women. And when I've got a woman she's like working hard and she's proved herself, and so she's gonna be like my right hand, right? I can count on her, and even at that point, like I'm gonna promote her to bottom bitch. So at that point, right, she's done all this to be like the pinnacle, she made it, and she's still it's just that same with that psychological. But where's it going with it?
Like an MLM.
What's that?
It's like an MLM.
MLM.
Tiers, multi-level marketing teams.
I was like, what?
marketing.
I was like
Lots
Dr.
of women
Jones.
who are recruiting people.
Yes, thank you.
are also victims of being trafficked.
Yes, thank you. I was like, gone. It's like, good night, everybody. No, that's exactly right. So basically, they're putting them into a position to run either the stable or a portion of the women for them. So say, I use this example because it's easy, just based off of the limited geography I know. So they're in Spokane, and they're gonna run a circuit they're going through, Missoula, they're gonna hit Butte, Bozeman, Billings, go into the Dakotas, and then come on back, whether it's a different route on the way back, or they're just gonna retrace their steps. But trafficker, I've got stuff to do here, so I'm gonna send the bottom with these other women, and she's gonna do it. So she's collecting the money, she's making the quotas, she's doing, getting food, transportation, all of that. So if we're in Billings and I'm out working a trick and I get busted, and then law enforcement is gonna ask me like, well, who's in charge? Well, I'm pointing to that girl. So that's all of that to say, that's where I believe that data can be a little skewed, and it gets tricky too, right? On the law enforcement side. It's easy to be, well, why isn't law enforcement doing more? It's really hard, what they've got to work through on a lot of that stuff. There's been huge strides taken by some law enforcement agencies in Montana and all over the US, but to get deputies, law enforcement trained to not arrest the victim. Because oftentimes we're back to that where we're talking about the laws, right? You get a John that gets locked up before the new legislation. He gets locked up, or doesn't get locked up. He gets a misdemeanor and a little fine. And then this woman who's a victim, now she's got a felony prostitution charge. So there's been a lot of advancements on law enforcement's side on that. But that was like, I went on this trail and then I just started branching. But sometimes that's how it goes. Clothing. This one is big for Montana. Somebody mentioned earlier truck stop,
Oh, I did, yeah.
right? So right now, I'm a baby, but it's freaking cold outside, right? I live here and I still am like, it is so cold. But with that said, right, so I stop at the truck stop on our way back tonight. And I don't need fuel, we need some snacks, need some energy drinks, some sugar to get us home. And so I'm just gonna park in the back and just go through that door. Less crowded, not as many cars back there. So I go in through the entrance that the truck drivers would take. And there's a woman standing there, girl standing there, and she's in, short skirt, skimpy top, high heels. It's like, I'm not a genius, but I know Montana pretty good, and I can feel how I feel right now with a coat on that is cold outside.
Boots on.
Right, exactly right. And so something, we don't need so much of that like internal guardian, right? That's like, hey, that's obvious. But it's a huge indicator that we can use, right? When there's going to be clothing that doesn't fit with her surroundings. Other times you may see that clothing is completely wrong size. It's just what they had on hand, and that's what she got. It's looking at those things of, okay, for where she is, for who she's with, if they're well dressed and she's just in what looks like they picked up at a, stopped, grabbed whatever sizes at a Goodwill, and then that's what they got. Little things like that. And again, I wore like baggy clothes as a kid that probably looked goofy. So it's not that one thing alone, but it can be a great indicator for us. And honestly, on that front, I know I used truck stop example, but same applies coming in here, right? She comes in and it's like, your outfit, it doesn't make sense. Those targeted questions, we can use that. Like, oh, you must be freezing. Like building that rapport, building that relationship, little things that we can touch on. Like I said, I would let you know when there's going to be tough stuff to see. Tattoos, we're going to go through some images. So please, if I don't know your histories or anything like that, if you need to, please feel free to step out, put your head down, whatever. Tattoos, branding of victims is huge. And we're going to go through some of those and different brands, tattoos they might use. So names that aren't theirs, right, tattooed on their body. We're going to see a lot of the vulgar. Again, I'm not an expert, but I've got 3 sisters, got a wife, got a mom. So I feel like we always say maybe we're like bachelor's level, like educated on women. I don't know a woman that would willingly get something like this tattooed on her body. Maybe I'll be proven wrong at some point, but to this point in time, it's never steered me wrong. Also, I don't know if you can see from the back, but or if you're familiar with tattoos at all, the edges on these tattoos they're so raised, which means that first off, that wasn't done correctly or professionally. And in my opinion, I feel like a message was being sent because obviously more pressure equals more pain. And then again, the vulgarity, I don't know anyone that would put that on willingly. Drugs, condoms, money signs are obviously big. As you can see, the initials with the crowns, we'll see a lot more of those, but pimps love crowns. Again, names across chests is big. Roses is something to look for. Again, this isn't just if you spot like a rose tattoo. Like I know a lot of people get flowers as tattoos, and that's great. So it's not like, boom, rose, trafficking. But the property of, and then roses in human trafficking world, roses are their currency. So if you see an online ad, it's a quick visit, 70 roses, so $70. That's how they communicate. So yeah, roses are big. This woman right here, she's actually testifying against her trafficker. And you can see that she is showing the tattoo that I can't make out the full name, King something, which again, back to the crown. But yeah, very brave individual that is testifying against her trafficker. Right now, the tattoos along the hamstrings there higher up is big right now. It's like the current fad. Not to get too much detail, has to do with the sexual position where you would be able to see those tattoos while it's being performed. Is anything in this outside of obviously the tattoo, what sticks out to you in that photo?
The braids.
Braids? Anything else? What's that? Earring?
Well, where it's located at. That's, I mean.
That's, yeah.
That's huge.
Like someone stepped out of line, right? Like the
Well,
message
everybody
and,
knows that she's loyal to someone.
yeah.
Or that she's gonna remember.
Or someone's trying to make her remember that she needs to be loyal to someone. That's a very good spot.
I think because she has a keloid scar underneath her earrings and they often get the earrings pulled out.
Okay. I have not heard that answer, so thank you for that. I'm using it next one. I'm gonna sound so smart. Is it keloid? Okay, yeah, my next stream, I'm like, if you just notice the keloid scar, people are gonna be like, what is this guy? What always draws me in is just the eyes, to be honest. And I know it's not like I don't know. It's just something, it's that intuition again, right? It's something that you're gonna see, and maybe there's not anything that's like jumping out. Maybe there's not a big loyalty tattoo on their face when they come in, but the eyes are broken. Again, I'm not saying that it's boom, human trafficking, but something's off. And that's where we can start to try and ask some of those questions. So the tattoos across the chest are super common. They will oftentimes actually put them backwards. What would the reasoning for that be? See it in the mirror. Every time you look in the mirror, you know who owns you. Anytime, right? These things, flip that on selfie mode and it flips the image. Anytime they're posting an ad, taking a selfie, they're reminded of who owns them. Again, pimps love crowns. A lot of times they'll be with, associated with initials or names. Just like we were talking with bottom girl, right? Every once in a while you might see king and queen crowns. Like she's gotten to that place, she gets to wear that crown. Roses again, it's blurry, but it's the $ with pay me. Oftentimes you might see that on the palm, maybe like FU, pay me, $, that kind of thing. And that's, a lot of times that's gonna be the pimp, that's gonna be the trafficker, that's gonna have that kind of tattoo. You might see the bottom girl that has something like that if she's gonna be collecting money. I don't know who King Munch is, but he is one cheap bastard because that is the worst tattoo I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And then for a long time, the inside the lip was like a big thing. It's kind of fallen off, but it still is present occasionally.
It's not the super permanent tattoo.
The inside the lip,
Eventually
they
fade
fade
away,
quite a
so
bit.
it's just kind of, it's really just a pain factor.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean it hurts any less, it'll hurt way more.
Yeah.
But it's not even going to stay.
That makes
It will eventually go, so you'd have to go in and just remind them.
Just do it again. Yeah. Daddy, that's, obviously terminology for them referring to their trafficker or pimp, property of. Again, money bags, money signs. You might see dates. And that can be associated with a lot of different things. Could be when they got into the life, could be some twisted anniversary for bottom, right? It could be whatever day that was decided. So, healthcare workers, and I know you probably can't see it too great, but this one outside, obviously there's redness and everything from the tattoo. Is there anything else that stands out to you? Yeah, exactly right. And if you can't see it in the back, I know it's a ways, but we've got bruising here, we've got bruising down along the sides. This is actually a picture that we use when we get the opportunity to train like tattoo artists. Obviously that's not an injury that somebody got because they got a tattoo, right? Yeah, the redness, I can see that. with all this bruising, that's something where that radar should start flipping. And again, money sign, F you, pay me. So barcodes, they were very popular for a while. They're still used, more so on the side of just that message of ownership, right? But they tried for a while to actually make these functional. And they worked, but they're so finicky that like in ingrown hair, really anything would throw it off, so then it wouldn't work. So they actually have switched now, QR codes are a big thing. And it's, you know, we'll get the, oh, it's for payment. And maybe, but a lot of times it would be, so I'm a John, and I paid for quick visit. Now that it's done, I'm gonna go over to Anna and press back. I'm gonna scan that QR code, and that will take me to Anna's review site. And so that's where I can go on and I can say she is who she says she is, her pictures are accurate, cost was what she said it was gonna be, all that stuff. I mean, disgusting.
Isn't that traceable? I mean, wouldn't it say
Dark web.
your phone number or something?
Dark web.
That's good. That's all beyond my knowledge as far
I'm
as.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
So,
but it's
Google me.
it's something that's heavily used. And honestly, please don't go looking for it. It is easily accessible. So they're not going to know where they are. They're not going to know like what day it is. As a trafficker, right? I want to keep you as in the dark as possible with where we're going, what day it is, because it just makes it that much harder for you to find any kind of escape route. So some tools that we can use or some strategies that we can use in that questioning, right, is, hey, we're in Deer Lodge, but I could be, oh, how are you liking Missoula, right? And if there's just no idea, right? It's, oh, it's great. Like this is, oh, how long are you going to be here? And there's just keep those follow up. There's just no clue there. That's an indicator, right? They keep them as in the dark as they can to maintain as much of that control as possible. They're going to have a scripted story. The thing is, it's going to be scripted, but it's probably not going to make sense, right? It's like, it's rehearsed and they know it, but things aren't gonna quite add up. Or maybe the details from time to time, like, well, I asked her this back then, and when she told me this, like that detail flipped. And that's gonna be both on the victim and the trafficker side. Because he doesn't want them saying anything outside of what he knows that they're saying. So he's gonna put it together for them. And all they're focused on is saying that scripted story. But again, on the trafficker side, maybe that's a different name than he used the last time, different age than he said at first. Those things start to change. So it's scripted, but it still doesn't make sense.
Do you find where the gentleman answers the questions for the victim?
Definitely.
So they don't need to talk?
Yeah. That's huge. And I would imagine that's probably even in like domestic violence, I would think maybe that's something you guys experience.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so parallel with that.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of it runs kind of parallel. So they always think they're being watched. And again, this is back to the woman that I spoke about earlier. Even if they're not, they wholeheartedly believe that they are being watched constantly, that anything they do is going to be reported back. And obviously with that, there's going to be a level of fear to step out of line, to answer some questions, anything like that. Because just how that woman believed that guy, every time someone walked in the room, that it was going to be him, they constantly think that they're being watched. And then obviously leads right into this, right? It's just, they're afraid. And this plays heavily into that, letting them answer questions. You're gonna see, this one might pop up in a little bit, but they're not gonna make eye contact. They're definitely not gonna make eye contact with a man. And that just goes all into the pimp game and their rules and their code. So basically, if I'm a pimp and I've got either one or my full stable of women with me, and we're walking and a rival pimp is walking along the other way, if she looks up and makes eye contact with that pimp, by the rules of the game, she now belongs to him. And so what he will do is he will come up to me and he will say, hey, your girl just chose up, which means I own her now. And me, I have an option. Okay, I can either let her go and she now belongs to him, or I can pay for whatever that fee is to get her back. And then when I do that, I'm going to beat the crap out of her and send her back out to make up that money that she just lost me. So yeah, there's going to be fear.
Just eye contact?
Just eye, and I can't explain. They've got
They have their rules, their code.
There's books of
Code.
yeah, the pimpin' rules of the game. Yeah, it's unbelievable. They have their what is it? It's like a pimp ball that they do. I don't know if they're doing it anymore, but every year. And it's like a big party. They dress their girls up and strut them through. They have awards for Pimp of the Year, this and that. Public as could be. You could go watch it on YouTube if you want to. Wouldn't recommend it. It's disgusting. But yeah, they're obviously with all of that, right? Everything going, there's going to be extreme fear to step out of line in any way, to say something wrong, to make eye contact with the wrong person. They're going to have fear of security, uniformed security. They've been taught that that's the enemy. They've been taught that that person is out to get them. There's strategies used as far as when they're in like breaking a girl, they will bring in somebody in uniform that will rape that girl, and then when he leaves, Ben comes in and says, you can run, you can call the cops, but they're my friends. So there is a built up fear of security. We actually, our team did a training at the airport in Missoula. And so now they always have on shift, 2 of their security is in street clothes for any situation like this, that those would be the individuals that would approach the victim.
Yeah, because if someone's watching them from the window outside or, parked out there and they see them walk up to a police officer,
Yeah.
you could just say, oh, that guy was asking me directions, or that guy was asking me something.
Or I was
But if
just
it's
offering.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many different strategies used to create this fear of law enforcement, security, whatever it might be. But that's also going way back, right, to letting them be involved in the decisions, right? Because that could be a big piece. If there is this like fear of law enforcement and you make that call and they come in, trust is gone. Like forever, trust is gone, and you're not going to get that back.
Well, you don't want to make the situation worse, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of this, do you learn from victims?
A lot,
as
yeah.
far as the inside stuff, when you finally get them out and they're in recovery and they're able to process it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot of I feel like input's the wrong word, but yes, our the individuals that we work with that have been victimized, we've learned so much from. Exactly. Like I said before, like I just cannot put myself in that place. But having that kind of, obviously in a time and place that they're ready, if they're ready, That's always something, at least in our organization, like we will never ask a victim to like participate on this side in any way. If they come to us and want to be involved, then 100%, yes. We've got a girl that actually speaks in our school assembly programs, and it is so powerful.
Powerful for her.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
The therapeutic side for her is huge. But then, I mean, I can stand up and talk to a group of students, right? And there's human trafficking, there's this, and we do it more by stories for kids to relay the different message that we want to get across. But when I can have her step up and be like, this is my story, it's like every friggin' jaw in the gym just drops. And it's like, now it's real. And
Because you're a
it's
clean
powerful.
cut, nice looking
Thank you
fellow.
very much.
There's a storytelling
Well, he
movement
just-
for people that have been
How would
abused
you
to tell their stories. And
Yeah.
they started in Alaska and things like that. And, but it's powerful because they tell their stories and that's part of the healing. And they people around them hear and then
Yeah.
become more aware and then more and more people get free from their
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, it's positive in all directions. But yeah, they get that chance to actually take control of it for
Yeah,
once.
It's healing a lot
No.
of the Alaskan natives.
Let's take a 5-minute break and then we will
And what I
come
meant
back and.
was.
No take backs.
I wonder if you can actually identify with them because you look like you probably
Yeah.
upper middle class.
I said they're the most ignorant.
And she said it looked nice, clean
Okay, yeah.
I said, have you ever come with some of the you go into the systems,
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah.
they can't be double jeopardy.
Oh, yeah,
And they will tell you,
really.
oh yeah, how they do it.
It's all proud.
You're all proud. Yeah, I mean, it's another way to look at it and because, you know, people are the vice president of the bank and they want to do that.
Yeah.
And you know what, they're going to strip out.
And that's the other thing, right? On the flip side, we talk about anybody can be victimized, because we're all vulnerable. Who could the trafficker be? Anybody, right?
Exactly.
It could be
That's
anybody.
I noticed your people were the fringy people, the worst ones I dealt with.
Yeah.
Were the businessmen, the teacher.
Remind you of your Jennifer?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's good to know.
Obviously, I'm sure there's gonna be that one.
So anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Does that tissue?
Well, there's always been outliers, right? Yeah.
And it's probably not.
Oh, yes, it is. Even there,
But
nothing.
for
And then-
that not time back.
I wonder, would that be any kind of, like, if they want to repeat that, like over time, will there be like scar building?
And
That's good.
Well, he
Well,
was addressing that up to someone that
probably,
he knew.
and that's only assuming if I
Was
guess
her
you're
clean. So he knew one. I'll give you some tips. about how to
So everything
find
that they're shooting it.
Oh, this guy has a lot of money.
How many use
I have a few tattoos.
Oh, I have it really.
I'm looking to get my first one this winter. I didn't want to get it when I was like gonna go swimming. It's like, cause that would be the time, right? It's like I just got it and it's like, hey, we're doing this big thing at the lake.
That's
Do you
my
know,
day
are
to
you gonna-
day.
do you live in Missouri?
bitch that I am.
Just outside. I'm in the lake.
Well,
Is this your journey?
I
I thought you
So
forgot.
I grew up in Frenchtown.
am familiar with the area.
Yeah.
Do you know where you're
I don't yet.
going? Okay, I always said that if you're in that area, I was at the, if they did all of my tattoos, I have 3 different artists there, and they didn't about anyone. I go to, I used to go to the, they just changed their name.
What's that?
They used to become like, the guy just changed their name to the lady that actually did it. Now it's like, it's straight up, just like,
It's kind of
Oh, yeah.
Fish Street Eats.
Okay.
They're fabulous. They kind of, I think it's funny because I live in what I think is like a residential area, but I see walking by there. They look so, clean cut and everything, and now there's four, original box with games.
Yeah. We're also gonna forget to do it. I used it the first time. The first one.
So I'm like, oh,
So they took it back.
come on, Jen, step up. We're in the business.
So they part of it too, it's like.
I'm not mad at you, I know how to do it.
I didn't know that was working.
That's my bra.
Yeah. The human trafficking follows the drug trafficking.
Does whatever, do they like to keep their girls under the influence?
It depends. That can be part of like the breaking, right? When they're using drugs to keep them reliant on them to get more. That can definitely be it. There's others that just, and it's just all about that psychological manipulation piece. And oftentimes, that I think is a lot harder to come back from than the drugs. So yeah, definitely drugs are a big part, but I don't think as much as we would think. Because really, again, it's the shame piece.
But she was like, under the.
Yeah.
So like.
I would say a high percentage of those that we interact with are like have been or are using, but yeah, not always. I think at this point in the safe house, 2 were and 1 was not. So we're working on that. That's right now we're working on getting our transitional housing done, and that would be where we'd be able to place a woman because there would be separation then from the rest of the house. So that's in the works. works. To answer your question, we have taken on children. It's a lot. It's a lot, yeah. But the goal is to yes. No, we only take adult women. The goal is to actually in the next, the big goal is like the next 5 years, have a youth home. So that's, yeah. So that was the initial goal, was a youth home, but the amount of red tape and everything we went through, we had some connections that were from a safe house, so they said, you're gonna do youth home, open adult first, and then when you go to do youth, and you can show that experience, it makes it way easier. So it was more of a, let's get this done so that we can more quickly get to the so, and I think that was the best way to go. Okay, we're gonna flip through this line. I always am like, oh, I hope I can fill time, and then I'm forever. I want to say, no, I wasn't. I don't think our group was. I think that was just law enforcement state. Yeah. We have worked with some of those individuals. They do fantastic work. Yeah. Well, the ones that you're supposed to be able to trust with your kids. Yeah. All right, we are gonna clip through this last little bit. I always am like, okay, I got all this time to fill and hopefully I can fill it, and then it never fails. Like at the end, I'm like, okay, we got a lot to get through really fast. So language, their language is gonna be vulgar, over-sexualized, and I know that can be kind of a common theme, just depending on where you are, but it's gonna be to an extreme. Especially when we're looking like at age, right? If you've got a younger person that comes in and it's just this like over-sexualized language, that's a big indicator and something that we need to pay attention to. ID, right? Any ID, even money for that matter, like they're not gonna have access to that. If it's something that's needed, that individual with them, you know, is gonna pull out their identification, any kind of, anything you might need of that nature. So they're not gonna have access to that, they're not gonna have money, he's gonna have, he or she, I always do that, is gonna have that. This one, we're gonna skip by, we already talked about the eye contact. So it goes back to the clothing, right? And it's just as amplified because we're talking about a minor, definite indicator, under the influence of drugs, alcohol, minor, that no matter the situation is something that we need to pay attention to and take action on. Malnourished, and signs of sexual or physical abuse. This one's tough, just because of, I mean, we used to always go places like with my grandpa, and sometimes he would have like my 3 sisters and they were going to do something. He always used to get mad at my dad when he was doing this training. He's like, hey, that's not something you should say. But it's not like, you know, again, it's not, that's trafficking, but it's something, if that, indicator starts to bleed for you, then something to pay attention to. This just goes right back to the ID. They're not going to have control of that. Anxiety, depression, fear is going to be apparent. And this just goes right back playing into that fear of law enforcement, fear of security. That may come out in a way where they are aggressive, belligerent, vulgar to or at law enforcement. Some of these we're touching on again, but repetition hopefully will ingrain in your mind. And again, just pointing out the cigarette burns, checking the hairline is such an important tool. Again, lie if you have to, but if you can get your fingers into that person's hair, that could be a huge indicator. Okay, so we are gonna blaze through some red flags. Okay, so infections, this could be for multiple reasons. Just because a woman is on her cycle, for instance, right, she doesn't get off work, they're gonna use different strategies to make sure that she can continue to work. One of those is like, or they might not have access to hygiene products. So one example we've heard of is like no access to tampons, so they wrap toilet paper around like the end of a pencil and then use that to as a makeshift tampon. That one, I mean, self-explanatory there. So this kind of goes back to that example with the tampon, right? Something like that. Or oftentimes when they're on their cycle, they may shove like cotton or anything like that to stop the bleeding to where they can still work, to where we would find the presence of debris. I mean, self-explanatory, obviously, for healthcare workers, but when we're talking about just the number of times that they are being forced to have sex, the number of times they're being raped, it's gonna result in trauma. This one, I always hate this one, uncomfortable to talk about. Problem with jaw or neck, when we're talking about quick visits, that may be something to like a blowjob, right? Or if it's a woman, girl that is new to the life, maybe where they are saving the that girl's virginity for a higher dollar amount, and they will just use her for oral sex. The repetition there, we're going to see a lot of jaw and neck injuries. And I apologize, I hate like talking like that in front of people, but it's just the reality of it. Repeated abortions or miscarriages. Again, with the malnourishment. Okay, and this goes back right to where we were talking, maybe they've got their own doctor. Obviously, all this woman is worth to him is about making money, so it's not something where it's an immediate like need for her to get help so that she can continue to work. They may just work through it, and then you're gonna see that there's that anything that's gone untreated for an unreasonable amount of time. Here's right to your question right at the break. So yeah, there could be addiction, drugs and alcohol. We see a lot of that right now. Like the leading criminal enterprise in the world is drug trafficking, and right behind it is human trafficking. And just how we talked, right, I don't need to go and remake. I can just sell her over and over again. With that in mind, my guess is that it won't be long before human trafficking actually takes over that #1 spot. And these are valuable questions, you know, that you can be asking as well. And this just goes back to, you know, using the cotton balls and things like that. And that just falls in line. It doesn't mean that they're always going to go into a professional establishment to get these done. They've got their doctors that obviously they're not going to do things how they should be done. So this kind of relates back, if you remember the chart where we were talking about human trafficking should not be siloed, right? It's not just going to be pregnancy centers or clinics or one place that you're going to see. This is just kind of an expansion of different forms of violence that have been reported. And right, we were just talking about that with the teachers that they have, right? Person of authority, person that's supposed to be in a place to protect individuals, and they use that to victimize them instead. And that's just the sad reality. This, I hate this one. I mean, like I was talking about our safe house, you put in all this effort and all this work, and it's going to do good, and it already is. By the time we're done with our second phase, we'll have 19 beds for individuals. But thinking about this and those numbers, right, of how many are being enslaved today in our world, and like we talk all the time of, oh, we'll end human trafficking, we're going to end human trafficking, which is great, and that's always the goal. But if I could snap my fingers right now and end human trafficking, we would have nowhere for them to go. And that's just another, they know that. And if they have reached out at some point and have been denied, that just reinforces that belief. Because there is places, obviously we do not have enough beds. There needs to be more. But we do have resources. It's just a lot of times it might be that, well, there's nothing for me. That's just been instilled and that they believe.
Got in the car, I knew something was off.
Simone Miller was only 16 when she was kidnapped and trafficked by a man she had just met.
He was just like, I'm a pimp, and you're my hoe, and I'm gonna take you somewhere. We're gonna be given instructions on what to do, and running is not an option.
She was taken to a hotel where other women were being held. Simone says the man who told her he was a rapper when she first met him warned her if she tried to escape, he would kill her mother and her grandmother.
If anybody knows me, like that's like my weakness, you know, because like my family is all I have.
As days went by, Simone was desperate to get out of this situation.
What can I do? And I just like played along, and I had him thinking like I'm okay with it, you know, I put on this red lingerie.
The pimp let his guard down, and when he took a shower and left his cell phone on the bed, Simone made a quick phone call to her mother.
And I said, Mom, and she said, baby, where are you? And I said, I don't know where I'm at, Mom. She just said, tell me what you see, Simone. I said, I'm like looking out the window of this hotel. I said, I see like a 7-Eleven. She's like, okay, what else do you see? I said, like a, you know, a church's chicken. She's like, okay.
Somehow, with that brief description, her entire family hit different locations, searching for Simone until they found her outside of a 7-Eleven. Her captor was inside buying cigarettes, unaware his victim was about to be rescued.
All I could think was when this man gets out of this 7-Eleven, it's gonna be trouble.
Despite everything he put her through, Simone protected him, telling her family he wasn't the man who kidnapped her.
I still know that it wasn't right what he did, but I got in the car with him, you know what I mean? And I just didn't want them to kill him in front of me. And I kept saying, no, that's not him.
It's been many years since that horrific experience. Simone is now a crisis interventionist at Teen Project, a nonprofit that helps survivors of human trafficking.
It's healing. Subconsciously, I'm healing by helping.
Such a strong young woman. Now, you may be wondering what happened to the man who took Simone. Well, her family let him go the night that she was rescued. He was later killed in an unrelated incident.
Alex Christine, I'll send it back to you.
Unrelated incident. I love that one. That's my favorite video show. So I do want you to key in though on, so first off, they said it's been many years ago since this happened, but when she's explaining it at the end, I know what he did was wrong and all this, and then she says, but I got in the car.
Yeah.
And just to give you an understanding, it's been years and she appears to be in a good place. She's working to help those that have been victimized. And I imagine has come a long way since then, but there's still that piece of that self-blame. Well, I got in the car. Well, it's still on me. I know I shouldn't have done that, but, and that's just, it's another, again, I can't understand it, but it's just another glimpse for us, I think, into what a little bit of that mindset, what that manipulation is. We're going to skip some of these because they're not as important to us. So we're just going to go through some of the, just because I believe that this could play a role for you, things that you might see, some of the stories they might tell if you start to build that rapport, some of the things they might communicate, right? So they might have lied about future employment, travel, whatever it might be. We worked with a family. Their daughter was promised a job in Las Vegas. And when she got there, magically that job had just been taken up. But there's this other job and it's at the strip club, but it's serving. And some of the girls, you know, they do a topless fee. You don't got to do that. Anyways, you kind of see the story progressed. And she was gone for, I want to say, 3 years before she was able to get back home. So those promises of employment, and then when they get there, pull the rug out from under them. These days, it's so easy. If I want to get you to where I'm at, I can send you a plane boarding pass on the phone. And I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are. You'd walk through, scan that ticket if you got it, and got your ID, then you're good to go. And they're not going to stop you. Now that we are training airports, though, that is changing. I do want to add that. This is huge. You know, it's a promise of those documents, and then when you get them into that place where you can control them, right, then we're going to dangle that, and we're going to threaten with that, and use that however we can to maintain control. We spoke about this a little bit earlier. It might be something to where you can threaten me all day and not going to happen. But the second that they start threatening family, it's all over and they'll do whatever you ask them to do or tell them to do. This is a good one to key in on because of your location and your proximity to the interstate, right? There's ways that you can frame your questions to try and figure out. Again, oftentimes they're going to be left in the dark. But if there's different things that are said that line up to, okay, they're just hopping from town to town, and then it seems like they just do it again, that should get that radar bleeping for you. And then back to the, you know, same as the scripted stories in general, you're going to hear that. It says officials, but with honestly your threat to the trafficker, you're going to get that scripted story because you are in a position where you can make a big impact, where you can intervene. And that's just going to fall right in line with the fear of law enforcement, with them holding ID, with them holding papers. Physical violence, whatever that retribution looks like. So they have no say in where they go, when they go. They do what they're told. Why are you here? I don't know. You know, I'm with them, this, you know, all that's start to stack up. Language barriers, we've dealt with this. I mean, what better way as a trafficker, right? What better way than to come in and, well, she doesn't speak English, and, well, this is small town Montana, I know you don't got a translator. And so it's a little less suspicious than if I have to answer the questions for her, right? Because otherwise, it's like, well, he keeps chiming in when I ask her questions, but if I can't communicate with her, it's just that another step. So there are times when that's not, the language barrier isn't accurate as well. You know, if there is a situation where, oh, she doesn't speak the language, I have to translate, and then you catch them like speaking back and forth. I mean, ding, 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 that's a red flag. This is a big one. We touched on familial trafficking. We no longer, if we are able to help a victim and if there's a rescue, we never say, it's okay, you're safe, we're gonna get you home. Because a lot of times these days, that is exactly where it started. And if you wanna see the fear put into that person, that's the ticket. So that's, if there's fear of being returned to family, yeah, big indicator for minors. Yeah, I mean, that one's kind of self-explanatory, but at the same time, if there's a history there, right, in the system, there may have been abuse in another, I guess, during their time in the system. You play a big role in this one, right? We've talked about this a lot, is when they're here, if you can deliver that positive experience, even if it's not a time where they're gonna come forward, we can keep them from having those negative experiences with, obviously, like, you're coming to the hospital, so like something's wrong, but like one-on-one talking with individuals here, if they can leave with positive experience in their mind, this is a safe place, they cared about me, that's huge, and it goes miles. This sounds goofy, it's legitimate. There's a survivor we've been working with for 11 years now. In all, they've pulled 3 trackers out of her person, embedded under her skin. But that doesn't stop there. I mean, and this is, don't get the idea that like this is super common. We haven't seen a ton of it, but I want you to know it's real at the same time. Trackers on vehicles, stuff like that, that can be legitimate as well. Yeah, we just had a victim actually, and we had kind of a panic moment because her dog had one of the collars on. We were like, oh crap. But she had just put that on herself, so it was good. But with that said, that's something to be aware of. I mean, in this field, you're gonna have a lot better access to understanding, right? If there is something like that in play, like on their person, then I would. Like, I have no access to anything that would ever tell me that. Getting distrust of authority figures. And then shame is huge. For a lot, that's the piece of the puzzle that got them into the life in the first place, and that was exploited. And this is your guys' world. I'm gonna let you kind of see if there's parts I might chime in, but I'm not gonna try to explain the medical field to medical professionals either. That's me right there. I need treatment for sleep deprivation. And again, Faye, it's gonna be, presenting multiple, right? This can be even by physical abuse, right? It doesn't mean that there's, it doesn't mean that it was like a fake doctor visit. It could be flat out physical abuse.
Falling down the stairs. Gravity's just really strong.
Okay, so this next little section, we're gonna finish with this, right? So first and foremost, we've talked about this quite a bit. We're gonna give them a reason to trust you. Let them see your motives. That also goes into making sure that they're included in the decision making, right? Giving them that little bit of control and showing your concern. I mean, that goes a long way in that rapport building, in that trust building. So some questions, right? You feel safe. Obviously, if they answer yes to that one, no matter the situation, that action needs to be taken. It's simple, but offering that is monumental. You're being held against your will. Are you being forced to do things you don't want to do? Engaging if you're comfortable doing so. If you're not, if it's a scenario where you're not, finding somebody who would be better suited for that is a good step. Someone I was talking, who asked that question? Right, it doesn't have to be this super direct, but if we can start to just feel out with some of these questions. This goes back to that limiting resources, right? They're going to create that separation, pull you away from everything that you have as a resource. And the reason, back to it again, that these questions can be so vital, right? They might not self-identify, but they can answer these questions, even if they're not going to come out and say, I'm a human trafficking victim. Well, has anyone forced you to do what you didn't want to do? Well, yeah.
A lot of these questions are actually like in our charting system. There's a human trafficking portion, and a lot of those questions are actually in. So if they answer yes, like it will get flagged. So the next person will see risk.
And that's fantastic. Yeah. Because that's something in a lot of trainings that we've done, that's something that's been missing, right? Because how we talk, it might be multiple contacts with different health centers, hospitals. If that's not being tracked, it's just starting from square one, right? At least on our end. For them, it's still just that relationship rapport building, still huge. But if we can have a heads up before you're going in to meet this person, that goes a long way. And remember, this goes back to what our priorities are. It's not, we're not trying to come in and save, but we're trying to assist.
I feel like they may have heard that last one before.
Mm-hmm. But the key here is that repetition, right? It's like, I'm going to say this and I'm going to back it up. And then next time, gonna say it, I'm gonna back it up. You're exactly right, though. That goes right back to that. I heard that before. That's how I got here. That's.
Well, I was gonna say to that too, they're gonna have more trust from like a healthcare provider situation than somebody on the street that notices something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's a little bit more.
One would hope.
One would hope, yeah. I would hope, yes. I would think.
This can go a long ways too, right? Open-ended questions when we talk about the scripted stories. If we can ask those open-ended to where they need to expand, we can hopefully start to dissect that story a little bit and being like, well, that didn't match what you said. Well, that doesn't make sense. And then again, that's very important on the front end of building that trust. This is what it is. If you say this to me, this is what I have to do. But being upfront with that, I get it, because part of me, when I think of that, I'm like, well, I just want to be sneaky, and then I could be, gotcha. Now we gotta, but that.
Sometimes that's an out for people though, I think too, like a good out, I mean. Like, if a doctor were to say, you know, look, you just disclose it just so you not get after reported, or whether it's domestic violence, whatever. But maybe it's a way for that person to get it disclosed where it's not necessarily them, it's once removed. So it looks a little easier to do and maybe from theirs.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Yeah, that's a good thought. And again, a lot of it, I think for the most part, is gonna be timing, like where they're at. I mean, it might be one person comes in and it's just, maybe it's their first interaction and they're just not there. Another person comes in and it's, yes, I need help. That was, great point. Yeah, and with the scripted stories, right? So even if we can, ask pointed questions, open-ended questions to try and maybe weed that out. And finally, adopting a victim-centered mindset. And I get it's like, you got like this, and then it's like, goes down to like, judge you. But that's a big deal. Like when we talk about that shame piece, getting that out there, that's big. Again, it might take, I'd say on average, probably more than 3 to 5, but still, you put in that work and you'll see that true stories start to emerge, which is the end goal. Okay, and yeah, we've gone over that a bunch, but that's one thing I do want you to remember. This just goes back to whatever you've got to do. If you get that gut feeling, those indicators start to add up and something is off, do what you have to do to get that person alone. Lie. I mean, I don't care if they came in for a sliver. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. Protocol, we got to get a urine sample. Like, I don't care. Just lie. Fire off some of that lingo that would go over my head and lie. Get them alone. Have these conversations. It's so important. So we're going to end with just some things not to do, right? We're not going to make assumptions about the person or the situation, at least outright. I mean, part of what we're doing in recognizing is we're kind of like, well, it could, but communicating that off the bat is a different story. Right? Goes back to that shame piece. And then keeping them in some level of control. And then that's a difficult one, right? We've talked about that a little bit, at least for me. But obviously with minors it's different, but adults, you've got to give them that level of control, and you've got to respect that as hard as it may. I said it was the last one I liked. There's one more. Validating. And you were just talking about, this is something that you guys do, which is fantastic. Okay. So we will end on that, but I'll throw up, just gonna throw up the sign or the poster here for the, didn't like that. For the hotline. So we've got, you can call and text to this number, and then live chat at 406stop.com. And this, again, this resource, it is available to victims, survivors. If you see something and you want to report a tip, you've got a question, questions on a resource. I know at this point, like, we're working really hard to try and gather all the different resources that would be applicable to trafficking victims. I know that our list isn't complete. We're working really hard to find, because it really doesn't, a full list of what we have doesn't exist at this point, and that's what we're trying to build. So if you do have even resources like that you think would be helpful and that we may not have, or you just don't know if we would, send those our way. I want to build that in to be a complete list of this is what we have to offer in this place. And obviously, you're going to know what resources are available here a lot better than I do. I can do searches, I can make phone calls and try to find those, but at the same time, you're going to know if that's a place that should be on our list. And I say that as nicely as I can, because we've had resources that have just flat out dropped the ball. Down to, we had a woman that was ready to get out that we were told she was going to be picked up, and she was not. And we got a call from her later, and she says, "Is anybody coming?" And so we had to figure a different route. And so, needless to say, they are not on our resource list anymore. But that it goes a long way. Getting those kind of resources where it's, hey, I know these people, they do good work, and they are going to show up when they say they're going to show up. So with that, thank you so much for having us. We're going to hang around for a little bit if you've got questions or just want to chat about anything. I've got some information up here, just our rack cards with general information on the Lifeguard Group. We've got our deal here for the Lifehouse. Just got a little more information on that. Some pictures. These pictures are now actually outdated. Some of these things are very different than they used to be, thank God. It's come a long ways. But yeah, there's some information on that. And then we've got some recognizing human trafficking victims, like red flag cards. My card is up here. And if you like stickers, I don't know if stickers are a big thing anymore. I feel like they are. I think they're cool. So feel free to grab as many of those as you would like. And then if you're interested, first off, if you're interested in getting involved volunteering, I know you're all busy. You got a lot going on. This is run completely by volunteers answering the phone. You can do it from your cell phone. It's just downloading an app. You can do it from anywhere. So that's a way to get involved on our website. A bunch of other ways if you want to, volunteer in any way. All the info's there. And then if you want to, get involved financially, we actually just launched the 210. It's our goal to get 210 people to donate, sign up to donate $210 a year before February 10th. So that all helps go towards what we're able to do with Lifehouse. Yes, sir.
I'm glad you brought that up. Where do you get your funding?
People like you. Yeah, we've got our biggest income source is from individuals, families, churches. We do get some from foundations. The Gianforte Family Foundation, they actually donated a huge lump sum back to help us pay down a big chunk of the safe house property. And then we try really hard on grants. I despise grants, but it's like, you still got to do them. But yeah, just people generously giving is where we get started. We've worked with Operation Underground Railroad. They have two individuals that I've worked with that are, I think they're based in Billings. But that's another thing, like the Attorney General, he's actually put together to where